Excalibur. Excalibur, sword of promised victory, Yakusokusareta Shōri no KenEkusukaribā, is the strongest and most majestic holy sword that symbolizes King Arthur. As that which can be called the physical actualization of her ideals and the symbol of her heroism, it is her greatest and most powerful noble phantasm. Its power is said to be rivaled by Rhongomyniad. Excalibur was created 14,000 years ago by 6 great fairies in Avalon. Created as a weapon to be used by the planet against external threats, it was used to defeat the White Titan. Excalibur is a divine construct, the pinnacle of holy swords, and the strongest holy sword whose equal is the strongest demonic sword Gram, one of the ultimate god-forged weapons, a last phantasm, forged by the planet as the crystallization of the wishes of mankind stored and tempered within the planet. It was guarded by extensions of the planet, fairies, before briefly being passed on to King Arthur by the Lady of the Lake and later returned to the lake before her death. It replaced the destroyed Caliban, and its sheath, Avalon, provided partial immortality for its wielder. It is said that this sword, born, raised, in the inner sea of the planet, exerts its true power only when an enemy that threatens the planet emerges. While a powerful sword, it is said that Avalon was more valuable to her. When said to have answered Merlin's inquiry about which had more value, with the sword being the obvious answer, the court magus chided the king in that the sheath which protects is more important than the sword which slashes the enemy. She eventually lost Avalon, and replaced it with invisible air, which she uses during the Holy Grail Wars to hide the sword and her identity. It and Caliban, her first sword, are often confused due to their close nature in the legend. Both the sword from the stone, later broken, and the new sword received from Vivian, are called Excalibur, but that was because they were originally 2 separate stories. They were later combined into a single narrative, the former becoming known as Caliban and the latter becoming known as Excalibur. There is also some debate about whether or not Excalibur was reforged from Caliban, or if they were 2 completely different swords from the start. The swords are similar in nature and appearance, though Excalibur is more suited to be used as a weapon. Excalibur has good performance as a sword, almost completely devoid of ostentatious ornamentation, and Caliban is extravagantly adorned as a symbol of the king's authority, making its rank as a weapon lower. They have similar abilities based in using light to attack the enemy, which Shiro sees as an obvious conclusion from the similar appearance. There is a theory that Caladbolg is the same as Caeldfulch of Welsh mythology, making it a prototype of Excalibur. British Lost Belt. In the British Lost Belt, the fairies refused to forge the blade out of laziness, allowing the White Titan to ravage the world. The Fairy of Paradise, the Morgan of the Lost Belt, were originally created by the world to force the fairies of Britain to repent and complete their duty of forging Excalibur via Avalon Le Fay. However, Morgan was never able to accomplish forging the holy sword, so Artoria was created to fulfill Morgan's old mission. In 2017 AD, the forces of Chaldea managed to forge the holy sword themselves. When the Artoria of the Lost Belt entered into the star of the planet, its heart or core, to forge the holy sword, right before the process would cost her life, Senji Muramasa, a pseudo servant using the body of Shiro Amiya, stepped into the planet's star, taking her place during the final forging stages and, at the cost of his life, saving Artoria while finished forging the greatest holy sword. The holy sword was then given to Chaldea by Artoria. Attributes. While there are many other noble phantasms crafted more splendidly and with better skill, Excalibur is an illusion far superior to them. It cannot be called beautiful because of its appearance, for the description of beautiful will only dirty it. It is instead sacred, made from people's conceptions, a legend weaved purely out of hope. It is not a myth or inhuman work, but a crystal trained by the heart alone, making it reign as the strongest fantasy. It is the crystallization of the prayer named glory, and everything etched in the hearts of those who are scattered at the sword's radiance, the nostalgic, sorrowful, and hallowed dream of those who were placed on the bloody hell called a battlefield, of all warriors past, present, and future fully exposed to the fear of death and despair, and who still cling to a desire, to be exalted. Looking upon its light makes Gilgamesh fondly remember Enkidu, and it is able to make even Gillis de Rice, having fallen into brutality and smeared with corruption, remember the light and glory of his past that has been etched into his heart before it destroys him. Excalibur is a typical Western sword with a length of 90 centimeters and a width of 12 centimeters, and it has fairy letters inscribed on it to show that it is not the work of mankind. It is normally clad in invisible air to hide its identity and increase its destructive power. It must be revealed to unleash its full power, and charging it with energy to slash an enemy, called the gold version, Kogain Bajin, brings about an overwhelmingly superior power. Its destructive power widely varies, with invisible air showing a power from 80 to 90 and the gold version showing a power of around 1000. While it takes time to figure out the noble phantasms and identities of other servants, Lancer is able to deduce her identity as King Arthur from a mere glance at the sword, claiming that any heroic spirit that has traversed time and space to join the Holy Grail War would never mistake her golden sword for any other. As a divine construct, it is impossible to reproduce with projection. While Excalibur image is an exception due to the environment where it is replicated, it is possible that Unlimited Bladeworks would normally contain degraded noble phantasms with similar abilities within its store of weapons. Within the world of Fate/Kaliad liner Prismaelia, the general rule still applies, but Kuro, inside the body of Iliasviel von Einsborn and using the Archer class card, manages to project it and release its true name, which would normally be impossible even with the ability to replicate it. Though weakened, it has the ability to exceed the power of the original when faced with the manifested Saber class card. Usage. Excalibur is a sword that amplifies, converting its user's magical energy into offensive power and releasing it. It is a weapon of directive energy that converts the magical energy of the wielder into light by accelerating it with her factor of the dragon, intensifying the kinetic energy by convergence and acceleration, allowing for the use of divine spirit-level thaumaturgy. It is an ultimate killing technique that releases light-holding energy rivaling Artoria's entire magical energy supply from the tip of the blade once the sword is swung. To an observer, it looks like a giant beam of light, but the attack's target point is only at the tip. It is the ultimate slash that cuts through everything in the area the light goes through. Its enormous power heats space around the tip, and as a result, it is interpreted as a wave of light that mows across the surface of the earth. One could also call it a directed energy weapon. Even if it is dodged, those in close proximity can still be temporarily distracted by its intensity. It is considered to be among the greatest of noble phantasms, with its speed, attack power, and reach upon being activated surpassing and remaining unrivaled by all others. In terms of competing against others in pure power, only EA is known to be able to match and surpass it. The speed required for activation is less than a second, slightly surpassing the speed of the charge of Via Expugnatio. It requires a sufficient amount of distance between her and the enemy, and the further the distance of the opponent will increase its effectiveness. Once something is struck by it, no human magecraft of any kind can match it. Both hands are needed to use the attack, so losing access to her hands means being unable to use the ability. After the tendon in her left hand is severed by Gi-Bid, making it impossible to move her thumb or exert enough strength to grip the sword hilt, this inability is reflected upon changing Excalibur's status to anti-unit. The doll of Zachary Ainsworth, utilizing the Saber class card, is still able to invoke Excalibur despite losing one of his arms. However, with only one arm, his accuracy with the Noble Phantasm is drastically reduced to the point that Shiro Amiya is able to easily dodge the blast and Zachary's remaining arm is wounded from the attack. It ranks as an anti-fortress Noble Phantasm due to its magnitude and destructive power, far surpassing anti-unit and anti-army Noble Phantasms. She generally attempts to aim it into the sky due to its destructive power, able to incinerate an entire military cohort of 1,000 soldiers and turn the ground into scorched earth, leaving a great disorder in the land that would never fade. Briefly touching the ground against Rider, it leaves molten asphalt and burns away a forest, and used against Berserker in the Einsborn forest, it leaves a large enough crater deep into the forest that can easily fit 2 people. When launched into the sky, it can be seen from far around, even cutting into the clouds. It also quickly incinerates the gigantic horror, capable of instantly regenerating with damage under the constant assault of 4 servants, by annihilating every single atom of its flesh. The magical energy consumption is extremely high, leaving her exhausted after usage, and it cannot normally be fired consecutively. Releasing the sword where others can view it will allow others to instantly figure out her identity. This requires her to use it only as a last resort, compared to the weaker but easier to use invisible air. As her opponents are the size of humans, its size and energy cost can be considered somewhat unnecessary when compared to those with the cost and efficiency to use just enough power to kill the opponent. If used without enough energy or a master to actively replenish her, it can cause her to instantly fade away upon usage. When used while weakened by her connection with Shiro, she can only activate it once before she is almost out of energy, while she can use it more times upon retrieving Avalon. It is possible to activate it without sufficient energy, but the resulting Excalibur will be weakened. When used in Night Without Dawn, she fails to defeat Berserker, likely barely able to take off even 2 lives before instantly fading away compared to the full-powered version that could potentially kill him outright. Its destructive power can also be a negative trait that limits its usage, as it can easily damage the surrounding area and kill a large number of people if used under the wrong conditions. This trait makes it impossible for her to use it against Archer during Fate/Hollow Ataraxia due to the great risk of destroying the central building and numerous buildings around it to reach him. She can somewhat control the output with precise calibration, but it is still easily capable of completely destroying Fuyuki's church while holding back energy to minimize collateral damage. It is possible to limit its destructive power if the opponent focuses on close-range combat, and it cannot be used against opponents who fight at extremely close range, such as Assassin, who could cut off her head with Tsubeim Geishi the instant she began to gather energy into her sword. Variations. Excalibur Morgan. Excalibur Morgan, Sword of Promised Victory, Yakusokusareta Shōri no KenEkusukaribā Murugan, also known as Black Excalibur, KenEkusukaribā, is the form Excalibur takes after being corrupted by evil. Just as the fairies of the lake, Vivian and Morgana, can coexist as polar opposites embodying good and evil, Excalibur can also hold a dual existence of good and evil. Due to its nature as a sword that amplifies, it is blackened when Saber is blackened by Rhongomyniad, reflecting her inner feelings and corrupted nature as Saber Alter. The blackened magical energy is the primeval curse that lurks in the British Isles, and it is Artoria's older sister, Fairy Queen Morgana, who has inherited it from King Uther. The name of this holy sword has changed because it may be the only connection that Artoria has with Morgan Le Fay, with whom she could never see eye to eye until the very end. Its darkness is similar to the breath of the dragon Vortigern. Becoming the Black Sword of Ultimate Light, it is no longer sheathed in invisible air and takes on a different appearance. Rather than creating an almighty slash at the tip of the sword, Excalibur gathers a large amount of magical energy to cover the sword in a black light with the same shape. It matters not if it is filled with good or stained by evil, as the fact that it is the strongest holy sword does not change. It can either be used to attack as a blazing black flame in a similar fashion to the regular Excalibur or, as shown in Fate/Unlimited codes, swung like a sword in an upward arc multiple times as a technique named Vortigern, Hammer of the Vile King, Hyo Tetsu Vatigan. Due to the corruption and the enormous amount of magical energy received from Sakura Matuo, Saber can fire this version of Excalibur without limit. Excalibur Proto. Excalibur, Ikusukaribā, differentiated from the Excalibur of Fate/Staynight as Excalibur Proto, Sword of Promised Victory, Yakusokusareta Shōri no KenEkusukaribā Puroto or Ikusukaribā Puroto, in Hanafuda, is a divine construct and the golden holy sword of King Arthur. Differing from that of Saber's Excalibur, it is a double-sealed weapon locked by two seals, invisible air and the restraints of the Round Table. It is the shining holy sword that saves the planet. A golden blade that repels pretty much any evil, built to defeat an outside enemy that destroys the planet. The strongest illusion. One drop of the planet's light. Crossing over all periods of time, it is the unfulfilled dream itself of many humans. After having lost the Sword of Selection, it is reported that this sacred sword was brought to Arthur by the Lady of the Lake. Even in spite of being equipped with a condition where its true power is being restricted due to its sheath, which is endowed with the 13 restraints that were designated with the names of the Knights of the Round Table, it still has a power befitting an anti-fortress classification. If 7 or more seals are released, the sword's true power as a divine construct to save the world is released, but otherwise, it still acts as a powerful anti-fortress Noble Phantasm. The seals remain locked until he activates it, causing a series of clanking sounds as the restraints are lifted one by one. Activated to counter Enki, it releases as an expanding pillar of light that cleaves both the Star of Destruction and Archer with a single strike and vaporizing the sea. Even without releasing its true name, Excalibur is still able to release its slash of light that varies in strength but are all weaker than its anti-fortress attack. However, it can be further enhanced in its destructive power by his mana burst skill. One was powerful enough to counter the Sword of Paracelsus' Noble Phantasm attack, while another overrided its power-snatching ability. With 6 restraints released, Excalibur's anti-fortress attack was powerful enough to defeat the rampaging beast after the death of Monica Sagiu. In Fate/Grand Order, the sword takes on the shape of when 6 of the Holy Sword's 13 restraints are released. Although it still cannot display its true power since over half of its restraints, in other words, 7 or more, have not been released, even so, this is unmistakably an intense light that defeats a great evil. The release of the Bedivere restraint is automatically being acknowledged, making one consider the hypothesis of a decisive battle against a greater being. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.